You're listening to the Play Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks, your source for centered and focused play therapy coaching.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Podcast where you get a masterclass in child-centered play therapy and practical support and application for your work with children and their families. In today's episode, I am answering a question from Laura in Washington State, essentially about as far away from me as possible, at least in United States proper. I know Alaskans are technically probably further away, depending on where you live in Alaska. But Laura in Washington, Brenna in Florida, literally top to bottom, side to side, about as far away as it gets. My niece and nephew-in-law actually live in the Seattle area, and I've been there, and it is very lovely. We loved the market. We loved Seattle Mariners Stadium, and we actually left for an Alaskan cruise out of the Seattle port. So anyway, I have good connections and memories in the Seattle area. So Laura, thank you for the email. Her question is about sand therapy in the CCPT Playroom, which I'm really excited to talk about this. So I'll read parts of Laura's email and then we'll dive in together. So she says, could you do a podcast episode on sand tray therapy, the use of a sand tray in CCPT, the theory behind why it's useful, essential miniatures to have, etc.? I'm finishing up my degree and I've been doing CCPT at my practicum setting with kids. I abhor the texture of sand on my skin. Do not come to coastal Florida. You will be very unhappy. We have beaches everywhere. And they're so pretty. Clearwater Beach. Public service announcement, y'all. Clearwater Beach, which is where I grew up. My hometown, legit. Oh, okay. Can I tell a related aside story and then I'll get back to the beach story? This is a very recent conversation that my mom, brother, and I had. So we were talking about hometowns because a lot of country songs talk about hometown. And I was sharing my thought on, there's a song that says, I'm proud of where I'm from. And so I was kind of just pondering, what am I proud of being from Clearwater, Florida? So I was sharing just my thoughts with my mom, and she says, where would you say your hometown is? And I said, Clearwater. And she says, you were born in Dunedin, which is an adjacent city, smaller adjacent city. And I said, well, I was born in Dunedin Hospital, but my home, like my first home that I lived in was in Clearwater. And she's like, but you weren't born in Clearwater. You were born in Dunedin. And I was just so perplexed by this. So then I'm like, Brandon, my brother, I'm like, Brandon, weigh in here. Where would you say you're from? He was not privy to the conversation my mom and I had. So he was not swayed in his vote. I randomly texted him in that moment and said, where would you say you're from if someone asked what's your hometown? And he goes, Clearwater. And I'm like, thank you. So now I need y'all to weigh in. Is it the city in which the hospital you were born? Is that your hometown? Or is it like the house you lived in, your hometown? I'm curious because I think I'm in the right here. My mom disagrees. My brother's on my side. I want to hear from you. Brenna at thekidcounselor.com. These are the things that swirl in my brain, y'all. This is what occupies my time when I'm not thinking about CCPT, which is rare, but it happens. Okay, so back to the beach. Clearwater Beach, my hometown, as I claim it anyway, is always top 10 beaches in the whole world. Like if you look at the beach ratings, Clearwater Beach always makes top 10 rankings. So if you are in a frigid area of the country or the world and it's winter and you would like to come to sunny, beachy, beautiful, palm tree laden Florida, even though Laura does not want any sand on her. But if the rest of you are interested in that, come hang out with me. We will go to Clearwater Beach. It'll be a great day. All right, I'm back on track, I promise. So I abhor, I can't even say that word. Why would you abhor sand? Oh my gosh, I can't fathom it. Okay, I abhor the texture of sand on my skin, so I have avoided buying sand for my playroom. I understand that sentiment. Additionally, I'm in a shared office space. The playroom I have set up is one of many rooms that other interns can reserve for use with their clients. But in case a different therapist needs it right after me, I have to be able to clean everything up in a timely manner, which has also scared me away from sand. But I just started working with a 13-year-old, which is my first older child that I'll be doing CCPT with. She has really intense anxiety, in addition to perfectionism and anxiety related to school performance that she and her mom have reported. I saw manifestations of her anxiety in our first session, where she spent the whole session meticulously organizing the room. Sounds about right. Something tells me that a sand tray might appeal to her. Yes. I would like to have that as an option in my playroom for her and other kids. Double yes. Do you have any tips on how to set up a sand tray and the essential miniatures to have, obviously for use in the context of CCPT? Thanks so much. I appreciate the work that you do. All right, Laura. So not only am I going to make you a sand therapy convert, you might actually not hate the feeling of sand on your skin at some point. It's a possibility. So here are my thoughts on sand work. I've been getting a lot of questions lately, actually, about having a sand tray in a CCPT playroom. So this is a really helpful question. I'm glad we're talking through this. My first thought, this is kind of just brain dump for you all. My first thought is if you have to have quick cleanup, if you don't particularly like the feel or texture of sand and or you're worried about the mess, you have two main go-to options. You can either buy kinetic sand, which is far easier to clean up, doesn't stick to things, doesn't make near as much of a mess, and you can typically have smaller areas in which kids can use kinetic sand. In other words, you don't need a massive sand tray with kinetic sand because it functions differently. So the container can be far smaller. So kinetic sand is going to be one option. Jurassic Sand is another. That's the only sand I've used for years in my center. All of my therapists have Jurassic Sand. There's all different grains, all different colors, all different styles. But why I love it, it's dust-free, number one. It's washable, number two. And number three, it does not stick to things. And it is just higher quality, better sand. I used to go to like Home Depot or Lowe's, which for my international people, that's home improvement stores in the States, and just get their, literally, it's called play sand. So it was designed to go in outdoor sandboxes most of the time. But it was more like beach sand, to be honest with you. And it stuck to everything. And it was not washable. And it was dusty. And there were just it started to smell bad after a while. After it had been wet and dried and wet and dried and wet and dried, it starts to stink. Long story short, we switched to Jurassic Sand. And we've been really happy with that. I don't have any affiliation with them. You know what? I'm going to see if maybe I could get you all a coupon code for all my listeners. So let me see what I can work that out. But what I'm trying to say is I'm not pushing them, plugging them. I'm not going to get a kickback from it. I just use it myself. And I really think that they are, to me, what I have found to be my favorite sand product for sand work. So those are your two options there. Here's another thought. With an older girl, 13, especially an anxious one, you are far less likely to have a mess made with sand work. So your younger kids, likely to make messes, either accidental or on purpose. Older kids, you typically don't have as much of a concern of the sand getting spilled or thrown or making a huge mess. So I think for your first one, it's probably a pretty safe bet, Laura, that a 13-year-old, especially an anxious one, is likely not going to make a mess if you add sand to your playroom. So what do you need to make this happen? You need a small container, ideally with a lid, and you want to have it on a table or on a stand. Either one. It can even be on a rolling cart and you can push it out of the way when you don't want to use it, and you can roll it out when a child wants to or you want to have it available. But it needs to be on something that is about at stomach height, give or take. So you don't want it really low on the floor. You don't want it really high. You kind of want it at stomach or so level. And it can be portable or not portable, whatever. It just needs to sit on something. And here's why sand work is really important. It's very self-soothing. The kinesthetic nature of it, the repetitive nature of it, it's tactile, it's sensory, it's all this stuff. There's self-soothing when a child just does repetitive behavior in sand. I think it would be really ideal for this client that you're describing, Laura. And that's why I do actually think that when you have highly anxious kids in your playroom, having a sand tray is just so powerful for them. So to move on to your question about what miniatures would you want to have, the simplest answer is you want to think about the three categories of toys in a child-centered playroom, and you want to represent those three categories well in your miniatures. You have acting out aggressive toys, you have emotional, creative, artistic toys, and you have real life toys. Therefore, your miniatures, you want to have animals, you want to have people, you want to have nature-related items, anything for real life, buildings and structures, fantasy elements, bridges. If you don't have a sand tray with a blue bottom, you want to have something that can be representative of water. Ideally, what you're doing is presenting a child with all kinds of different options to create out of those three categories what they need. And you really ideally don't ever just want one animal, for example. If you're going to have a zebra, you want to have 2 or 3 zebras because it needs to be able to make a family. If you're going to have an elephant, you want 2 or 3 elephants. So try not to just get one figure at a time. I mean, here and there, it's no big deal. If you do have animal families, you can have some individual animals as well. But you don't want 75 individual animals and no family units made up of animals. Similarly, you can have random people figurines, but you certainly want people figurines that make up a family as well. All kinds of nature elements. So trees, bushes, flowers, rocks, sticks, pine cones, anything you would find in nature, really, fake or real, and structures, hospitals, jails, schoolhouses, all kinds of little wishing wells. Those are really popular. Kids love wishing wells. Anything that's a structure in the world. Bridges, very powerful symbol in sandwork. Ladders. Think about, if a child's creating a world, what would they need in the world? I have a little metal mailbox. I love it. So just think about things that a child could use to create a world. Real life stuff. Food, drinks, plates, pots. And these are all small scale, right? And some of that's going to be hard to find. So just do what you can. And here's the blessing and the curse of sandwork. You will never have all the miniatures that you want, even when you have too many. So here's your fair warning right now. You get into sandwork, you will forever be buying miniatures, even when you have more than you need, because there are always more that you want. It's a never-ending money drain, but it's put to good use, I suppose. So just start with basics. Just like with toys, kids will use what they have. So just because you don't have 700 miniatures, if you have 70, they will use what is available to them, and they'll creatively figure it out. Just have as much as you can 3 categories of toys represented. And here's my final thought on a sand tray in a CCPT playroom. Much of sand tray training is Jungian or Adlerian. When we have sand trays in our CCPT playrooms, we are not following Jungian and Adlerian theory for how to do sand work. We're not telling them to choose a character for each person in their family. We're not telling them to name their world. We're not asking them to tell us what they would change about their world, what they would add to their world. That is not CCPT. When we have a sand tray in a CCPT playroom, we treat it just as any other toy option. So they can choose to play with it or not play with it. And if they choose to play with it, we respond exactly the same way we would to them playing with the army men or the stuffed animals or the puppets or anything else. We reflectively respond. You put that there. Oh, that guy, you chose that one for there. Oh, you got it. You found a spot for it. You're going to use the exact same interaction that is adherent to CCPT, even when a child is doing something in the sand. We don't ask questions. It's not directive. It's not projective. It's not anything other than CCPT all the way. So if they choose to do something with miniatures in the sand, that's just same thing as if they choose to play a board game or they choose to throw the darts against the target. It's just another option. So we do not deviate or change our CCPT approach. It just becomes another option for kids. So Laura, thank you so much for the email. I hope that was helpful to you, but to everyone as well. Maybe you haven't put a sand tray in your room yet because you didn't really know how you could integrate that. I hope that it gives you the courage and the excitement to think about it, because it really does add a special element to our work with kids. All right. I love you all. If you want to get in touch with me, Brenna at thekidcounselor.com. As I mentioned, only 2 podcasts for these 2 weeks in November that I'm in Australia. I'm fine. Don't be alarmed. I always do appreciate it when I don't release a podcast and I get a whole bunch of people reaching out and saying, is everything okay? So I promise you I'm fine. And if you have been thinking about joining the collective, we would love to have you, our online community for CCPTs, ccptcollective.com. Check it out. We've had so many new members join and really excited about what's happening in there. So if you've been kind of on the fence, please dive in, give it a trial and see what you think. We'd love to have you. Okay, love y'all. We'll talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and resources, please go to www.playtherapypodcast.com.